I used to think love healed everything. That if you were kind, loyal, patient, love would find you and stay. But I learned the hard way. Sometimes, love doesn't choose you. Sometimes it uses you. My name is Nina. And on the day I said, I do, I wasn't becoming someone's wife. I was becoming someone's revenge. Lucas looked perfect in his tuxedo. Charming, confident, that quiet intensity that used to make my heart flutter. To the world we looked like the dream couple. I was the calm to his storm. The woman who steadied the man with a broken past. And in a way that's exactly who I was, only I didn't know just how broken that past really was. We met through mutual friends. I had no idea at the time that he had just ended a tumultuous years-long relationship. He never talked about her, not at first. And when he finally did, he painted the kind of picture you'd expect from someone heartbroken. She left without explanation, played with his heart, and moved on too fast. He said I was different. That I made him forget the pain. That I was exactly what he needed. I believed him. Lucas had a way of making you feel like the center of gravity. He paid attention to the small things. How I liked my tea, what songs made me cry, the way I wrinkled my nose when I was nervous. He noticed it all. And when he asked me to move in with him after only 4 months, I thought I had found the kind of man stories were written about. I didn't know I was the story. He proposed on a rainy afternoon in a quiet little bookstore. It was intimate, thoughtful. He said he didn't want to wait. That life was too short. And I, wrapped in the fantasy of finally being loved right, said yes. The wedding was beautiful. Soft whites, gold accents, flickering candlelight. It looked like something out of a bridal magazine. But as I stood across from him holding his hands, I noticed something odd. He didn't cry. He didn't even smile the way he usually did when he looked at me. I told myself he was overwhelmed. That not everyone wears their heart on their sleeve. But I should have listened to the silence. Because beneath it lived a truth I didn't yet know. Lucas didn't marry me because he loved me. He married me because she had moved on. Her name was Amelia. The infamous ex I barely knew existed, until I saw her name weeks after the wedding, in a text message that popped up on his tablet. It was short. Saw the photos. She's beautiful. Hope you're happy. My chest tightened. It was innocent. Polite even. But I felt it. That sting. That sudden drop in my stomach. I asked him about it later, casually, pretending I was just curious. Lucas barely looked up from his phone. Just my ex. He congratulated me. No big deal. No big deal. The words rattled in my head. But they weren't what broke me. That came days later when I accidentally found an old email thread. I wasn't snooping, I was looking for a receipt he asked me to print. But curiosity got the better of me and I opened the folder marked Archive. Inside were emails, dozens, from Lucas to Amelia. They weren't love letters. They were cold. Calculated. Angry. In one just 2 weeks before our engagement he wrote. I'll move on before you do. I'll marry someone better. Someone who actually wants to build a life, not play games. And in another. I don't need you to come back. I've already found someone who fits. She's everything you weren't. And this time I'll do it right. That someone? Me. I felt sick. Used. Like a placeholder in a game I didn't even know I was playing. I closed the laptop quietly. My hands were shaking. My heart. It wasn't just broken. It was humiliated. I replayed every moment. The rushed engagement. The way he avoided talking about the past. How he pushed for a wedding date so soon. It all made sense now. He didn't love me. He needed me. To prove a point. To win a war with a woman who had already walked away. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because in that moment something inside me shifted. I realized I was never the love of his life. I was just the trophy. And I refused to be anyone's trophy ever again. I woke up the next morning with a fake smile glued to my lips and the weight of betrayal sitting on my chest like a stone I couldn't breathe beneath. Lucas made coffee like nothing was wrong. He kissed me on the forehead, told me I looked beautiful even in my old t-shirt, and asked if I wanted to have dinner with his colleagues that weekend. I said yes. I said yes because I wasn't ready to fall apart. I said yes because I needed time, Not to fix anything but to understand how a man could stare into your eyes, kiss your skin, sleep beside your soul and still hide an entire truth like that. The next few weeks were a blur. I played my part like I was born for it, smiling through dinner parties, answering polite questions about our honeymoon, pretending to be in love with a man who had turned me into a prop in his petty revenge tale. The worst part? He was so damn good at playing his role that sometimes I almost believed it too. Almost. But at night, when the lights were off and his breathing slowed beside me, I'd lie there wondering what else I didn't know. Did he ever really mean those things he said? The promises about starting a family? Building a life together? Or were they all just lines in a script meant to make his ex jealous? I started watching him more closely, studying the way his expressions changed when we ran into people from his past. The way he flinched slightly whenever Amelia's name was mentioned. It was subtle, but it was there. That tightness in his jaw. The flicker of something unresolved behind his eyes. Then came the moment that changed everything. We were at his company's quarterly gala. Black tie, rooftop, champagne flowing like a waterfall. Lucas was in his element, charming investors, laughing too loud, pretending he had it all. And then she walked in. I didn't recognize her at first. But Lucas did. His entire body tensed like someone had punched him in the stomach. She was radiant, elegant, confident, untouched by the chaos she had apparently left behind. She smiled politely, spoke to the room like she was hosting the event herself. And when her eyes landed on us, on me, she didn't flinch. She walked right up and said, "Nina, isn't it? I've heard so much about you. Congratulations on the wedding. You look stunning." There was no venom in her voice. No tension. Just calm, composed distance. Lucas barely breathed. I smiled. "Thank you. I've heard a lot about you too." She chuckled. "I bet." And then she turned to Lucas. "Nice to see you doing well. You always said you needed someone who would support your goals." Lucas looked like he wanted the earth to open and swallow him whole. I felt nothing in that moment. No jealousy. No anger. Just clarity. It wasn't me he'd been chasing. It was her ghost. Her shadow. Her absence. I was just the placeholder in a war that had already ended. That night after the gala he tried to make love to me. I said I was tired. I turned away and stared at the wall while he fell asleep beside me, completely unaware that I had already left him in my heart. The next morning I started planning my escape. Not a dramatic one. Not the kind with suitcases and slammed doors. I wanted a quiet exit. But I also wanted a legacy. I had put my dreams on hold for Lucas. Abandoned a marketing project I had poured my soul into before we met. It was a platform for small businesswomen, one that helped them build their brands without relying on exploitative firms. I shelved it when we got serious because Lucas said it was too risky and not the right time. Now I realized he didn't want me to build something that didn't have his name on it. He wanted to be the only star. So I pulled my dream out of the closet, dusted it off, and began rebuilding it. In secret. At first I worked from cafes during lunch breaks in between errands. I reached out to old mentors, pulled favors, stayed up till 3 a.m. watching tutorials and tweaking designs. It gave me life again. While Lucas was busy crafting the illusion of our perfect marriage, I was building something real. Something mine. And he had no idea. One night he noticed me working on my laptop at 2 a.m. "What are you doing?" "Just a project," I said casually. He didn't press. Because he never believed I had the fire to create something without him. He underestimated me. Just like everyone else had. But I was done being underestimated. My startup launched 3 months later. Quietly. Swiftly. But the impact was immediate. Women signed up in droves. Word spread fast. One viral story turned into 2, then 10. And then an investor reached out. An investor Lucas had once said would never be interested in anything small scale. Funny how things work when you stop listening to people who secretly hope you stay beneath them. My company grew. And so did my power. But Lucas? He still saw me as his trophy wife. Still didn't know I was preparing to walk away, with everything he never thought I could have. Because I wasn't just leaving. I was rising. The morning my company hit its first 6-figure month, Lucas brought me breakfast in bed and kissed me like I was his entire world. He still didn't know. And I didn't correct him. Because at that point I wasn't interested in waking him up. I wanted to watch him sleep on the illusion he'd built. The illusion that I was still his. He thought I was distracted by cooking classes and charity brunches. Thought my long hours were spent buying throw pillows and comparing fabrics with bored housewives. He had no idea that I was secretly negotiating licensing deals, managing remote teams, and being invited to podcasts as a rising female entrepreneur to watch. And I didn't volunteer the truth. Because when someone sees you as small, there's a particular satisfaction in watching them shrink in the face of your silence. But I wasn't just building a business, I was building myself back from the inside out. For years I had shrunk my voice, my vision, my ambition. I had dimmed everything I was to make room for his ego. And now that I was growing again, I realized just how much of me had been buried under his pride. Then came the email. From a woman named Kelsey. Subject line: "You don't know me, but I think you deserve to know the truth." I sat frozen for a moment before opening it. She was polite. Apologetic. But what she revealed made my entire body go cold. She and Lucas had been talking. For over a year. DMs at first, then drinks, then hotel rooms. He told her we were complicated. That we were only staying married to avoid media drama after his public wedding. That he didn't love me. That I was, in his words, just there for the optics. Attached were screenshots. Photos. Even voicemails. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a double life. And suddenly everything made sense. The late meetings. The cancelled plans. The way he'd been distant one minute and overly affectionate the next. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, remembering every time I questioned myself. Every time I'd wondered if I was imagining things. If I was being paranoid. If I wasn't being supportive enough. Turns out I was just being lied to. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him. I planned. Because when a man builds his life on lies and forgets that you're not just a wife, you're a strategist, he deserves whatever storm is coming. That weekend I invited him to one of my friends' networking events. He smiled and said he was proud of me for being social again. I wore a black velvet dress and heels sharp enough to make a point without saying a word. He didn't realize the event was for my company's private partners. Didn't realize the woman he was shaking hands with had already invested 6 figures in my vision. Didn't realize the smiling men in suits asking about my projections weren't just attendees. They were my advisory board. When I was introduced as the founder and CEO, I watched his entire body stiffen. It was subtle but telling. He clapped politely. But the tension in his jaw betrayed him. So he said nothing. Later that night he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked him in the eye. Would it have mattered? He said, "Of course." I smiled. "You once told me I had no idea how real business works." He opened his mouth but nothing came out. And that silence, that was my closure. From then on he spiraled quietly. Tried to act unbothered. But I saw the way he started tracking my social media. Asking subtle questions. Leaving the room whenever I got a new media feature. He had married me to make a point to his ex. But now I was the one being talked about. Invited to panels she attended. Praised in rooms where his name no longer held weight. And the more I rose, the more he unraveled. One night I came home late from a business trip and found him drunk on the balcony. He looked up at me with glassy eyes and said, "Why are you doing this to me?" I blinked. Doing what? Being this. You were never like this before. I walked past him, poured myself a glass of water and said, "Maybe you never looked closely enough." He didn't reply. Because he knew. He had created this version of me, not with love but with neglect. With betrayal. With the assumption that I would always stay small enough to fit inside the space he allowed me. But now. I didn't need his space. I had built my own empire, and there was no room for him in it. Not anymore. There's something poetic about watching a man drown in the very ocean he threw you into. That night, I watched Lucas squirm under the chandeliered glow of a room filled with the very people he once told me I'd never belong around. It was a gala hosted by one of my newest partners. A powerful woman in tech who had seen my work online and reached out personally. The invitation came with a subtle nudge. Bring your husband. If you think he can handle it. Thought, why not? Let him see what a room full of respect feels like when it's earned, not inherited. I wore a silver dress that shimmered like revenge under lights. My name was printed on the program as Featured Guest and Entrepreneur of the Year. His name was nowhere. From the moment we walked in, people gravitated toward me. Not him. They shook my hand, complimented my latest campaign, asked for my opinion on market trends. Lucas stood to the side like a misplaced accessory, nodding stiffly as I introduced him as my plus one. I could feel his pride withering by the second. But what could he say? That I'd outgrown the box he'd tried to keep me in? That the woman he married to spite another woman had now become everything he feared? The night grew tense when I was asked to speak. Just 5 minutes. A few words about growth, resilience, and building from scratch. I stepped onto the stage with the calm of someone who had been told she'd never matter, and then turned that doubt into fire. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. I spoke to every woman in the room who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, used as a placeholder. I said, sometimes the ones who break you are the very ones who teach you how to rebuild. Stronger, smarter, louder. The applause was thunderous. But when I sat back down, Lucas wouldn't look at me. He didn't speak the rest of the night. In the car he finally broke. You embarrassed me. I turned slowly. I didn't say your name. You didn't have to. I tilted my head. Why does it bother you if the story wasn't about you? He clenched his jaw and looked out the window. That was the moment I knew he was unraveling. Not because I had hurt him, but because I had healed without him. After that night he began acting erratic. Coming home late. Passive-aggressive comments. Picking fights over things like dinner not being hot or my phone lighting up too often. He accused me of thinking I was better than him. But I didn't need to say it. I simply was. My business was scaling. I had landed a multi-platform deal with a major lifestyle brand. Women wrote me daily saying I'd inspired them to leave toxic marriages, start over, find their power. And Lucas? He was becoming a ghost in our own home. Then came the final blow. One morning I received a message from my team. Apparently, someone had tried to submit a fake tip to a blog under my business's name, claiming I plagiarized my course content. The IP traced back to our house. To his laptop. He denied it. Said it must have been a virus, or someone hacking the Wi-Fi. But he looked me in the eye and I saw it. Fear. He knew I knew. And I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I called my lawyer that same afternoon. The prenup he thought would protect him? I'd quietly renegotiated it last year under advisement, when I'd become the sole financial contributor to the household. The new terms made it clear. Any slander, sabotage, or defamation voided his claim to joint assets. The moment he tried to weaponize my success, he lost his grip on mine. I served him divorce papers over dinner. He didn't say a word, just stared at the envelope, blinking like the room had spun sideways. I stood, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "You married me to prove something to someone else. But I became someone you'll never be able to explain away." He called me 10 times that night. I didn't answer. The next morning I had a campaign shoot with a brand that used to turn me down. Now they were paying me 6 figures to wear their clothes. I smiled for the camera. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was shining. And the best part? He had to watch. When Lucas left me, he thought he'd traded up. He looked at Natalie like she was the prize he always deserved. She was stunning, no denying it. Confident. Wealthy by association. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made everyone tilt their heads just to catch her perfume. He was infatuated, high on the attention she gave him. I saw the pictures. The beach trips. The wine tastings. The soft launch posts he tagged her in, captioned, "Finally found real peace." It was cute, really. The way he mistook lust and luxury for healing. But the thing about fairy tales? They fade fast when they're built on fantasy. Rumors started swirling just a few months into their relationship. People whispered that Natalie wasn't just beautiful, she was strategic. That her last boyfriend had disappeared quietly after she moved on. That she didn't date men. She upgraded them, used them, and discarded them like worn-out accessories. I didn't gloat. I didn't watch it play out like some twisted soap opera. I focused on building. My wellness brand had gone viral after a single post. A clip from a podcast interview where I'd spoken about betrayal and rediscovery. Women commented by the thousands. They didn't know my name before that week. Now they couldn't forget it. Book deals, sponsorships, and keynote invites followed like falling dominoes. And Lucas? He was living in a condo he couldn't afford, chasing a woman who had already begun to pull away. I found out she started showing up late to their dates. Traveling alone. Posting cryptic captions like, "Know your worth," and "add tax." He messaged me one night. Just a single line. "Do you ever miss us?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because the version of me who might have missed him was long gone. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted a photo from my book signing, standing next to a crowd of women holding up my memoir titled, Left Behind But Not Broken. It sold out in hours. Meanwhile, Lucas's once lively feed became a ghost town. No more couple photos. No more witty captions. Just stock images and vague reposts about growth and disappointment. A mutual friend later told me Natalie had dumped him on the spot, over brunch in front of a server. Apparently she met someone new. Wealthier. Older. Someone who didn't need validation from a broken past. Lucas was crushed. Not because he loved her, but because once again he'd been used. And this time there was no one left to clean up the mess. He started sending long messages after that. Apologies that sounded like rehearsed monologues. "I made a mistake. You were always the better woman. I didn't know what I had." He even showed up at one of my events. Uninvited. It was a women's empowerment panel. A full house. Cameras rolling. I was in the middle of answering a question about forgiveness when I saw him in the back row. Wearing the same cologne. The same desperate expression. After the event, he waited near my car. "Can we talk?" I tilted my head. "About what?" I never got closure. I almost laughed. "Closure isn't something I owe you, Lucas. It's something you should have earned by treating people right." He stepped closer. "I messed up. I know. I thought she was everything I wanted. And now you know she wasn't." Silence. Then softer, "I wish it was you." And for the first time I looked at him with nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just stillness. "Lucas," I said, "the only thing worse than being left behind is being asked to go back." He flinched. I didn't wait for a reply. I slid into the back seat of my car and closed the door. As the driver pulled away, I saw him in the rear view, standing there like a man who had lost the winning ticket and only realized it after the draw. He had left me for a mirage. Now he was begging for water from the very well he'd once called dry. And I was just getting started. I never planned on becoming a public figure. I wasn't chasing fame or headlines. I just wanted to heal, to rebuild the version of myself I'd once hidden to make room for someone else's shine. But sometimes healing is loud. Sometimes it echoes farther than you ever expected. My podcast, Unbroken, exploded in popularity. What started as a raw weekly diary of heartbreak and recovery turned into a movement. Guests lined up to share their own betrayals, women found strength in my words, and brands began to listen, because I wasn't just telling stories. I was building something real. I launched my own coaching network for women starting over after public humiliation. I created a line of affirmations, journals, and apparel that sold out in days. Speaking tours followed. Features in online magazines. Invitations to headline at women's conferences in Paris, New York, and Lagos. But one moment stood out more than the rest. It was the day I walked into the building that once housed my deepest embarrassment. The wedding venue where Lucas left me. The same chapel. The same stained glass windows. The same hallway where I had collapsed in my gown, mascara streaking my cheeks, trying to catch my breath while the whispers started. This time I wasn't a bride. I was the owner. The previous management had sold the place after years of declining bookings. My team had renovated it into a new kind of space. One dedicated to transformation. We renamed it the Phoenix Hall. Our first event? A women's summit titled From Shattered to Sovereign. The keynote speaker? Me. As I stood on the stage in the main hall, sunlight pouring in through the glass, I paused for a moment, remembering how it felt to be broken right here. And then I looked out at a crowd of 300 women who'd come to be inspired by my story. Not by my fall, but by my rise. After the event, as people lingered, taking pictures and hugging each other, a familiar face hovered near the exit. Lucas. He hadn't changed much. A little thinner. Eyes a little dimmer. There was no camera-ready smile this time. Just a man who once thought I was beneath him, now watching the world rise around me, and knowing he no longer belonged in it. He didn't approach me. Just stood there long enough for me to see him before he turned and walked away. And I let him. Because that was the real victory. Not revenge through destruction, but through undeniable evolution. I had become the woman he never thought I'd be. Not because I wanted to prove anything to him, but because I finally chose to believe in myself. Some days I still get messages, other women, other Alinas, telling me how they've been left, betrayed, humiliated. They ask me how I got over it, how I kept going when it felt like everything had shattered. And I tell them this: let them leave. Let them mock you, underestimate you, replace you. Because someday they will have to live with the memory of who you were, before you became everything they never saw coming. I was the woman left at the altar. Now I'm the woman who owns the building. And trust me, there is no sweeter justice than being the success story they never saw coming. So if you've ever been counted out, let them count. Just make sure when they get to 10 they're watching you cross your own finish line, with grace, power, and peace they can never touch. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more stories that prove one thing: being underestimated is just the beginning of a beautiful comeback.